everybody. Welcome to another episode of THEOLOGEEZ, where we talk about different belief systems. I talk to people who have had to cultivate their own belief systems or have melded belief systems together. This could be religion, this could be health and medicine, this could be feminism, which is what we're talking about today, and it can be so much more. So if you've watched an episode before, welcome back. If you haven't, welcome to your first episode. I hope you stick around. I'm bringing on friends that I've met throughout the ages. Today I have a beautiful soul, and we're going to talk about the women of the Bible. So if you saw our little intro panel, this is Spiceworld B C. So before Christ, although some of them are, kind of after Christ, but it's just logistics. We'll get into that later. So we'll go through a few women of the Bible. We'll talk about their stories. We'll talk about how those stories have kind of formed the views of women in society and just different ideals of feminism and even sexism in a lot of cases. And so I'm bringing in Lindsey. She and I met in writers group. We're both writers, but she comes from New York. She is the child of an interfaith marriage. She calls herself a Hebrew school dropout. And right now she considers herself to be a very open agnostic. So let's bring Lindsey in. Hi, Lindsey. Oh, and I forgot when I first published like a tweet about this idea of this podcast, you were like, I was almost, what was that, a religion minor? Or what was that?
Yeah, very close to being a religion minor. I would have been a religion minor if I had done the course credit math and actually worked that out for myself. I think I was one class short.
Dang, that's so close. So, but I mean, you obviously bring that experience to the table. So I'm excited to talk to you about that. And your parents, one was Christian and one was Jewish, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, my family's religious identity is kind of a mess. I describe it as I have one great aunt who was a nun and another great aunt who was an Orthodox Jew. So
wow,
very mixed background there. My dad was raised Episcopalian and my mother was soft raised Jewish, but never had a bat mitzvah or anything.
Okay, interesting. Did you have a bat mitzvah?
I didn't. Yeah, so I am a Hebrew school dropout. Yeah. My personal lore is that I was kicked out.
Got it.
But yeah. I asked a lot of questions, looking for proof as a little kid, which
been there.
It's pretty on brand, and weirdly the most Jewish thing about me is I love to ask questions, especially about religion.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I never actually learned the language, which would have been a cool thing to know. One of my regrets, but I think I dropped out around Genesis early on.
I'm thinking years or grades, and you pull out a book of the Bible. I love that. No, that's okay. That's cool. Yeah, for my background, just to fill everybody and you in, is I was raised Roman Catholic, pretty stringent, but also pretty loose because my parents were super young and they got pregnant before they got married, and then had to get married because they were pregnant. But I went to church every Sunday. Even in high school, I was the lector at Mass. I read the sermons at the church. I taught 8th graders religion or catechism. And honestly, and I go into this in another episode, is that was really me, for my resume. At that point, I knew that I didn't really believe in the faith. And it was just all about questions. Same, I have old journals, and I was going through it. My mom mailed them to me in quarantine. She's cleaning out my old room, and it's just okay, we're getting confirmed today. Promise we're doing it for ourselves and not for mom, okay? And I'm just what kind of existential crisis am I going through at 14? So and once I went to college, it was pretty much deuces, I don't really do this. But it's kind of interesting because even after I was gone, my whole family stopped going to church. It was that was something we did so regularly, and then it was and my mom describes it as saying I don't need to be there to have a relationship with my God. And I'm just I get it. Yeah, definitely. But I don't know what happened with them to make that shift happen while I was gone, So that's my journey. I was also like that kid that was like super into mythology. So I was just like, this could have easily been our religion, bro. I just don't understand like why this is real, but this is a real kind of thing. And then, when I first left, I thought I was atheist, and just like kind of a couple of years, I've been like super into like my spiritual journey and like kind of getting some beliefs. I definitely knew that I believe in karma and like positive energy and things like that. And fun story, Lindsay was one of my first tarot readings that I did for people. So yeah, I've been doing tarot for over a year now, which is so crazy. And now I make money doing it, which is weird. So
it should be you.
Thank you. So yeah, it's just, and that's part of it. It's just like, also just, I don't know, for me, like at this point, I believe that I have been here before. Like I've been here many times. I believe that things sometimes come too easily to me, and I'm just like, it's because I know. It's because I've been here before. So that's kind of where I'm at now. But yeah, so let's get started. I want to jump into this fun little game that I invented because during my super Catholic times, I had a bracelet that said, "What would Jesus do?" Right? WWJD, as you all know. And so I created this game called WWTBWS. It's not as catchy, I'll admit. It doesn't flow off the tongue, but it's what would the Bible writers say? So I want us to channel our inner Bible writer, okay? Yeah, this is, I'm like, I don't even know when they wrote it. Like, okay, it's 1000 BC, no, AD, it's 1000, and we're a man, and women are around, and they're not very important. And we want to tell the story of the Spice Girls, but not really. So we're going to finish this Spice Girls lyric. It says, sometimes you got to swing it, shake it, move it. Let's see. How do you think the Bible writers would finish this?
Ooh.
Sometimes you got to swing it, shake it, move it. I mean,
I feel like they'd be like, cover it in a very thick robe.
Yeah, or even like, sometimes you got to swing it, shake it, move it, kneel it, pray it. Like, like you just got to get down on those knees and pray it.
Flog it if we're going all the way back.
Yeah, flog it. Well, yeah, it's like swinging and shaking. That, I mean, if this is Bible times, I mean, that's probably pretty naughty. So, okay, I mean, I'm down with we can flog it.
Maybe flogging it.
Yeah, I think they would flog it. It's punishable by law.
Yeah.
To shake it and move it. All right. I'll tell you what I want, what I really, really want. I want. It's so funny. Like my brain always goes to pray. Let me try and channel a different writer because clearly that one's not working. I tell you what I want, what I really, really want. I want you to walk with the Lord.
Like I want you to renounce Satan.
That's so good. That's so good. And it like definitely hits our first Spice Girl that we're gonna get into. I love it. Denounce Satan. It's that.
Yeah.
And
the running theme.
yeah, it's pretty common, I think, throughout the whole books. All right, and last but not least, if you want to be my lover.
Ooh. You have to love Jesus Christ first and foremost, and then join me in the like sanctity of marriage.
Yeah, I love it. If you want to be my lover, and then also like thinking about that time period, it's like if you want to be my lover, you got to give me 5 donkeys. Your first daddy of your harvest. Like the dowry must be popping if you want to be my lover, basically. Love it. That was fun. Okay, so we're getting into our first Spice Girl, Apple Spice, or otherwise known as Eve in the Bible. You can see, I really thought that she was like ginger to me. I got that apple mentality. When I was looking at artwork, also like she's portrayed as kind of like almost a redhead sometimes. So I was like, okay. And as we go through, everybody has a different Spice Girl related to them. So I'll get into it.
Right.
So we all know Eve, essentially. It's like, even if you weren't raised with religion, like, it's like a part of our culture. It just is, like, the story of Adam and Eve eating the apple, getting, told that, they're getting sworn to not be in the Garden of Eden. And it's just like, that's the start of us having to wear clothes, of women having to have birth and get periods, which is like, bro, like, what if Adam gets a little bump in his throat and we got to do all this stuff? And it's like, okay, also God, like, you told Adam, but we never see it in the Bible that he tells Eve. And it's like, oh, she's just supposed to know because she's made from his rib. Like, and also, okay, this is my theory. And it might be quite controversial that, okay, God is supposed to be like the God of all beings, right? This is the parent of all parents. If you're a parent, you know about reverse psychology, okay? If you tell a child not to do something, they're gonna do it. So for him to be like, this is the tree of knowledge of good and evil, do not eat from it. It's like, oh, you want them to eat from it. Yeah. Like, oh, you know what you're doing. Like, I'm pretty sure that's what God wanted. Like, he was like, oh, they're gonna do this. Let me do it. Okay. What's your take on the story?
No, I mean, I agree. It's like in catfish lore, when like the woman like pretends to be somebody to try to see if her husband's cheating. I think it's similar to that. It's like, oh yeah, I'll dangle this in front of you just to see if you're faithful, but I'm gonna like do everything in my power to make you want to like.
Yeah, it's the best looking tree on the bunch.
Is God like the first case of entrapment? I don't know.
God's the first catfish. Oh my gosh.
First catfish.
Oh wow, I think we're on to something. Oh my goodness. And then also, just to like, I don't know, it's just like so weird, like, to me, that they put all this like pressure on this woman, and then they're like, oh, you are the bane of our existence, it's because of you. But it's like, Adam did eat the apple too, bro. Like, I don't know. And he didn't have anybody seducing him. Like, she got seduced.
He's like, I'm hungry.
Yeah, actually, you know what? Okay. And then also, like, the nude shaming for me, it's like, why does being nude have to be bad? Like, it was like, oh, we're naked, don't show me that. And it's like, that is like, to me, it just shows how important, like, being like a prude and like that pious nature was like such an important part of the narrative for society at the time, that they were just like, okay, like, the creation of man must tell people that they need to be wearing clothes, basically.
And I think if you bring like some of that feminism in there too, it's like the original body shamer, like comfortable in what you were originally given.
Yes, for sure. Oh, for sure, definitely. And yeah, I was like doing some more research into it because I didn't really remember it, and was watching some videos, and they were talking about how like they went on to like live to be like 900 years old, and like had like a million quadrillion kids because they had to start, civilization or whatever. No biggie. Yeah, no biggie. It was like real casual. They just had to like birth enough people where they could breed together, but it wasn't incest. I don't know how that worked out, but okay. Okay, Bible. But yeah, so I wanted to also like think about this is like so different. But I wanted to also think about like how this is like our first moment that we meet a woman in the Bible, essentially. And from that very carnal moment of her creation, it's saying that she cannot be her own person, right? She has to be made from him. And I was like, which we'll also get into when we talk about Lilith later, which is like so spicy. But yeah, so like that being like the first moment we meet a woman in itself, I was like, is pretty telling of what they think about women, is that, we must have a man to essentially like run our lives because, like that's their role, is like we're made from them. When in fact, like mothers birth all children, like you can't have children without mothers. So it's like, seems a little propaganda-ish.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting too, because when you look at a lot of other religions and like just mythology throughout the ages, like usually the like figure of like motherhood is where man comes from. Like you have like Gaia or like Mother Earth, and like it's interesting that like this is the origin story where it's like, no, men are in control and women are evil and should be shamed and are like pulled from men.
Right. It's like they have their womanly ways. They're always like they can't even think for themselves. They get swayed too easily by the devil. They're always hungry. What the fuck? Like
Well, that might be true, actually.
Might be onto something. But yeah, so it's just like super interesting to me, like that this is our first moment, and then from her we're supposed to be sworn to an existence of motherhood, painful motherhood, and periods, and them saying essentially because of her sin is why like women for the rest of our existence have to be in pain and all of this. It's just like, I don't know, it's just like so weird to me that they thought, oh, we see women bleeding every month, having painful labors, must be because they did something.
Yeah, how did they deserve this? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like so weird to me that men writing the Bible were just like, you got it rough, but it's because you guys did it to yourself.
And it's interesting that you say men writing the Bible too, because if you look at like the original version of the Bible before it was translated into English, they use the word suffering differently in this one context than when they use it in other contexts in the Bible. So like the idea of like labor being labor was always there, but the fact that it's interpreted as suffering is something that wasn't always there from the jump. So like it's interesting to me that only when it's referring to like a woman and something we can punish women for is it then like, oh, suffering. It's not just toil. It's
yeah. Wow. Yeah. There's a lot of that I talk about throughout this podcast as well, of like the translations of, like, oh, like very much people putting their own biases into the translations. And we'll get into that a little bit also with our next Spice Girl, which I feel like we're at a good point. We can move on to our next Spice Girl, which is Groupie Spice, good old Mary Mags. Okay, so I thought she was Baby Spice, but it's like I didn't know what to put for a groupie, so I put lips, like thinking like a fan letter, maybe she sealed it with a kiss. But yeah, so Mary Magdalene, very interesting because I feel like pop culture, and I didn't even realize that how much I knew about of Mary Magdalene was because of the Da Vinci Code. Like, like that's so sad. And so it's like, okay, this one man that wrote this one book of like conspiracy theories about the Bible, like is all I knew. So this is something that I was like super, I feel like, became awakened to the truths of Mary Magdalene. So because when I first thought of her, I was like, oh yeah, Jesus's girlfriend. And then I read an article and they're like, only Dan Brown thinks that. And I was like, oh, cool. But basically, so, and then also like, she's kind of been slandered throughout the ages because they thought she was a prostitute. But really, after, divulging through the Bibles, they realized that there are multiple Marys mentioned and multiple prostitutes, but the prostitutes are actually never named. So essentially, some men in 591 were like, that prostitute's probably Mary. Like, let's slander this girl, this woman who was actually one of Jesus's most loyal and purest like apostles. And interesting enough, she's the only one that's mentioned in every single book. Like, and it's just like, okay, so if anybody was really there, we know Mary. Like, if everybody's going to mention her, name drop Mary, like the likeliness of her being in his story and in such an integral part is like pretty strong. And I want to talk about how like that sexism of men and the interpretations of the Bible really can skew the way we see women throughout history. And with Mary Magdalene, specifically with women shaming and also like the controlling of women, because from what it looks like in the Bible, she wasn't married. She probably had her own like finances and was actually able to support Jesus as an apostle, but like help him and be with him like as a groupie. But, you know, so she was like this very independent woman for the times, especially. So what are your findings on Mary?
You know, my findings are pretty similar. I was interested in the fact that like, oh, this woman has her own money, therefore she must be a prostitute. And like, obviously 2020, like we don't look down on sex workers at all, but it is an easy way to try to take power away from women and try to shame her in this biblical context. When really she was like kind of Jesus's bankroller, which should be something that
sugar mama. That's his sugar mama.
No, and I think it's really interesting. Like, I know that there was, she sort of had her own gospel that was like discovered later on that isn't really recognized by the church.
Excuse the barking.
He's got very like firm opinions on this.
Okay, you good? Okay.
But no, and I think it's interesting when you look at sort of like summaries of what was in that. Obviously, I haven't read the whole thing myself, but I've read articles about it. And a lot of times it was saying that she was one of the first people who were like pushing other people to spread his word after he like died.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me that they then sort of spun that as like, oh, this woman is brave and forcing us to do something. We don't want to listen to a woman. We want to devalue what she has to say.
Yeah.
Was interesting, and like sort of the way that her story gets twisted away from that to sort of take away her power. Because I know that Peter, like first pope, was really threatened by her and threatened by the fact that she had this really personal relationship with Jesus. So it's interesting to see that power shift and like the way that her story then gets distorted in a much less favorable light.
Yeah, and not only that, but it's like she was. There's, I guess, two different tellings. So there's two different versions. One where she was the first one to see Jesus rise up. And then, you know, when he was risen from the dead. And then there's another one that says that she was with a group of women who witnessed him rise from the dead. So essentially they're saying that she is like the mother of Christianity. Like she is the first to really see him rise from the dead and tell his story as such and spread the word, like you were saying. So for me to like hear that and just to think about like my entire like knowledge of her beforehand was so like, I mean, yeah, like we don't shame sex workers now, but it's like for me to be like, oh yeah, that prostitute that was probably Jesus's girlfriend. It's like, oh, she's kind of a big deal. Like, and then another story said that she's the mother of like Easter eggs. Like basically like she would bring like boiled eggs that were painted and like that was like her gifts to like people. And I was like, oh.
They gave that to a rabbit.
Yeah. And then like, yeah, they're like, okay, kids, go hunt them or smash them. Go smash Mary Magdalene's eggs for the heck of it. So yeah, it's just like that skewing of, you know, taking away the power of the women. I mean, that's really the common thread, unfortunately, especially between Eve and then you get to Mary's story. And it's like these women that are just doing what they think is best and, you know, not really having any guidance, but then being very independent, I think is something that was shamed, you know. I mean, they're saying here that her portrayal as a prostitute started in 591. So it's like, yeah, that's like thousands of years of just being like, yeah, this lady's a prostitute.
I think that's like the first word people would associate. Like if you're like, oh, Mary Magdalene, people would go prostitute as like their
exactly. Yeah. And then to like, you know, to then switch it up and be like, oh, actually we reevaluated the text and that wasn't her.
Like she's actually saint and very important. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, she was there for everything and probably witnessed everything and is the mother of our religion. Okay, cool. Yeah, and also like you were saying, like the other apostles were very like frightened of her, and it's like that strong woman, you know, being like, oh, that's intimidating. Even today, in today's society, it's like, you know, at least for myself and like my past jobs, like me and my other coworkers, we never wanted to be like the angry Black woman. You never want to be like too aggressive and too forward, or, you know, and it's just like, we always have to bite our tongue. And so it's like, sometimes I even wonder, like, how much did Mary have to bite her tongue because these little boys were like, you're too strong.
Honestly, when I was reading the articles about her gospel about how they didn't want to listen to a woman, I was like, yeah, that checks out. I believe that. Like, that's every workplace dispute I've ever had.
Right? Yeah, it's like, yeah, some things never change, apparently. And I think that her portrayal is part of that. Like, that's why the things don't change, because, you know, as a society that leans on religion as a coping mechanism, that's what I believe it is. It's a coping mechanism for life. But as a society that leans on religion, it's easy to look at that in the text and be like, oh, okay, that's how we treat women. And it's carried on, and it's been such a strong thing. And it's just now really, I mean, even like, it's like when the women's rights movement in like the 1900s, but it's like, no, it's like we still have a lot of work to do. And like, I feel like we really just hit like the start. Like, we haven't really even hit anything.
Yeah, it is just the beginning. I always think about how recently women were allowed to have their own bank accounts. Like,
right.
It's nuts to me. Like, we are
yeah. Yeah, or like even in parts of the world where they're just now getting the right to get their license and drive cars.
Exactly.
And it's just like, okay, like how, like, yeah, the shift is happening, but it's taken so long. And I think religion has a lot to do with that, because of the way these original translators translated the portrayal of women. So yeah, so speaking of the, like, that powerful women, let's move into our next one, which is actually Power Spice, Queen of Sheba, which obviously is Scary Spice, like, duh. And so she's got her crown on. So for me, Queen of Sheba, I thought was just like a folk story. I just thought it was like a myth, like a kind of like a fairy tale based off of like pop culture.
That's I knew her from the idiom, like, who are you, the Queen of Sheba?
Yes, exactly. She was there with like kind of like Xenon, like, you know, warrior woman. And it's just like, I didn't realize, one, that she was in the Bible until I was doing research for this, and two, that it's like, that's a pretty big deal to be a queen that has like the control of your land back at that time. And so I was like, this is really interesting. So I wanted to learn more. And I guess she's like more so like popular within the Islam faith. But it's said that a lot of people show disdain for her as a woman of power. There were a lot of rumors created to tarnish her name, and like how she could be so powerful. But not only that, I was watching this video about her, and then I guess like the big story about her is her trip to visit King Solomon. And he saw her as a threat and was like, we need to meet. And she was like, okay. And I guess the journey was supposed to take 7 years. And she's like, I'll see you in 3. Like, that's how good I got it. I'm going to see you in 3 years. And she like literally trekked, and they're not sure exactly where Sheba is, but Ethiopia claims her. So they're like thinking about this trip from Ethiopia to Jerusalem. And she just like brought all these seasonings and like all this gold. And she was like, here you go. Be scared. Stay scared. Like, but then I guess they had a kid together. So it's just like, oh, come on, girl. Come on, girl. But then there's also a story that maybe she didn't do it willingly with him, and he had like 700 wives. So it's just like, Anyways, what are your findings on Queen of Sheba?
My findings are similar, where she just kind of seemed like a bit of a badass. Like, she was going up against this like legendary king. Like, oh yeah, like I can do that. I can do one better. Like, with pretty much everything. One of my favorite stories that I found, well, I shouldn't say favorite because it's kind of like gross and like telling of men, was that he spread this word. He had like hairy legs and
yes, I saw that. I was like, weird, but okay.
It's interesting to me, just in the context of like modern feminism and the way that like we police women's body hair. And like every story I had heard about that was like, oh, it kind of started in like World War II, when like the razor companies like wanted ladies to start buying them while men were at war, so they'd like shave your legs.
Yeah.
The story I read was that like he was so afraid of her like body hair that he like ordered a servant to get her like a hair removal cream before he would meet with her. And like,
what a freak. Yeah. The story I heard was that so like his magical seeing eye guy, which is I guess called a jinn, but got translated a lot as genie, told him like, oh, like, you know, oh, you should be scared of this woman not only because she has power, but because she has goat feet and hairy legs. And he was like thinking that this would scare him, but instead he was like more intrigued by it. And he was like, I must see these. And so what he did was, in this story, the narrative says that he put a layer of glass, clear glass on the floor, hoping that she would think it was water, and raise her skirts so her skirt wouldn't get wet by the water. So she would have to be forced to reveal her legs. And I was like, that is trifling, first and foremost.
Yeah, he's like the guy on the subway, like taking an upskirt pic.
I was like, did he want to be like watching from underneath? I wouldn't put it past him, but I was like, this is like just showing like men's like disgust and also just like obsession with female bodies and like how we look and how we're versus how we're supposed to look. It's just like, okay, bro, like,
The story of the two of them like was very much the border of like, is he afraid of her? Does he hate her? Does he want to fuck her? Is it like all three? I don't know.
Yeah, it's okay. I already said it, so I'll put a warning on this one. But it's just like really interesting, like to this woman that could have so much power, and like in Ethiopia is like still worshipped to this day. There's shrines of her, like she's considered the queen of their community and civilization, and she just had so much power. And it's just to see like how that could be translated into this, you know, brought down into this one narrative of, you know, not only allowing her to be her own character and her own heroine, but being like, okay, let's link her with this king. And let's also include stories of her objectifying her, of him sexualizing her, of him possibly even raping her. And then, you know, like, oh, and then send her back to her country. And it's just like, it's just a lot for me to see that, especially as somebody who is probably from Africa, who's probably like a notorious, you know, Black queen. And it's like, we've kind of just minimized her story to this crazy tale of this man, just like basically being like, how can I get my way with this woman? Yeah. And then pretty much doing it and getting it, even though she's this big queen.
Yeah, there's a big undercurrent of the like, thanks for the spices, like white people from every part of history. Like, thanks for the gift. Like, I'm gonna tell you goat feet.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh dang, now I know what ginger tastes like. Here's a son. That's all I can give you. Like, here's some.
I don't care. Yeah,
yeah, just like, I have 300 kids, but let me give you one since you gave me these gifts. It's the least I could do. And it's like, also like, just like that idea of like, oh, that's all the man can give her, even though she's given him all this, is like, that's pretty real for relationships. Is like, sometimes the women give their all and the men are like, cool. Thanks. Like, oh yeah. Oh, you didn't want anything, right? You didn't want anything, right?
Yeah, are you good?
Yeah. You came, right?
Your 7-year journey back home.
Yeah, exactly. And she like has a kid on the way, and the kid becomes 6 years old by the time she gets home. It's just like, well, this is my was it like your little gift from your vacation?
Yeah.
This is my souvenir.
Here.
Welcome to Prince. All I got in Jerusalem was the sun. Don't know what to tell you guys. So yeah, but I mean, I love that there's this strong woman. I just hate how the narrative had to, you know, essentially be skewed. And again, a lot of that could be translation, and a lot of, you know, things I think also getting left out that maybe were a part of the story.
Seeing things through his eyes, his perspective. It's like getting the breakup story from the boyfriend who like might have been abusive, you know?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'd love to hear what makes her crazy, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, like, yeah. So that's how I feel about Queen of Sheba. But I was happy to learn about her, and to see that she's more than just like a movie character, or like, you know, like, oh, like some fake Wonder Woman in my mind. Like, yeah. So I was like, that's pretty cool. So let's move on to our last Spice Girl. Well, I won't say she's our last Spice Girl because you're our last Spice Girl. But Naughty Spice. Uh-oh. And naturally, I put the devil head over Posh Spice because, yeah, she definitely gives me Lilith energy. But yeah, so I didn't know much about Lilith, and I guess technically also because she's not canon in the Catholic Bible. She's more a part of mythology, specifically Jewish mythology. But obviously through pop culture, her name, we hear it all the time. It's kind of synonymous with feminism, with like Lilith Fair, but also like in like Sabrina the Teenage Witch, like the new one, like she's like the devil's concubine, and she's also supposed to be like the queen of vampires in some stories, and it's just like this weird telling. But I wanted to take it back and like go to the root of it all, where the story is that she was Adam's equal and his first wife, made from the same clay as him, not from his body. But because she didn't want to become this some subservient wife, she essentially got cast away. And I actually heard a little story today that said that not only did she not want to be subservient, but she wanted to ride him on top during sex. And he was like, no, that is the man's position. And I was like, fascinating. And I was like, what? So yeah, so she got cast away, and they're like, redo, take number 2, let's make it from him, so she has to be subservient. So we're cycling back to Eve a little bit. But yeah, so what did you know about Lilith versus what have you learned?
I'm going to be honest, the majority of my references for Lilith were from like pop culture, like TV shows. Like I feel like every show I've seen that like has a demon in it, or like it's a little bit on the lazier side. No offense to the shows. We'll just be like, oh yeah, it's Lilith. Yeah. Mother of demons, mother of vampires. Just throw her in there.
Yeah.
We're going to put a sexy lady in a corset, and that's our demon. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like weird. And I guess she was like supposed to be like the mother of demons, I guess, after she got cast away. It's like she gets with the devil and she just starts birthing demons. It's like, okay, guys, like that's a bit dramatic just because she wanted to be on top, like, or she just wanted to be treated as an equal. And again, it's just like, you just see this thread in our civilization of these women who are strong and have power and want to be on top, and they keep getting, you know.
Yeah. Her story is really interesting to me because like, I think it links up with like the way that people who are scared of feminism talk about feminism in a way, because is this woman who wanted equality and then ended up like eating babies.
Yeah.
Similar to the people who say that like feminism is going to be like the death of the family, or that like a woman who wants to be equal or wants a career or wants to have any sort of power in her relationship also is like clearly like anti-child, a bad mother, like all of these things relate back to children and childbirth. I think is really interesting.
Definitely. And in my notes here, it's like, I wrote her story and then I go, sounds familiar. Like, where have I heard this before? Oh, everywhere, at all times.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like, yeah, that the demonization of this woman who wants power and like them linking it to motherhood. But also like she technically like didn't really go against anything God said not to do. But it's like typical men to like make up rules after the fact and be like, oh, you want to be on top? Oh, you're not allowed to be on top. But you didn't say I was.
Is there like an extra commandment in there? Like thou shalt not be on top?
No way. It's just like, oh, you can't make up rules after the fact, buddy.
Yeah.
But alas, they do it. So yeah, it was just super interesting to me too, to see how like people have kind of reclaimed her as you know, like a figure of feminism because of it. And it's like, yeah, absolutely. Like, you know, whether she was real or not, it's like, it is a story of a woman, you know, trying to stick up for herself, go against the grain, and be strong. Before there were any other women to, you know, mentor her to see how they do it. And it's like, okay, like, yeah, that's somebody you can look up to for sure. And they just cast her away. And it's like a warning, right? It's a warning against like doing that.
It's a warning, and it's like a method of control. Like if Eve's story is like used as an excuse to make women suffer through childbirth, like there's a story, or there's historical evidence that that like the story of creation was a reason to not start using like epidural type medicine in childbirth for a lot longer than they had the technology to do so, just because they thought women deserved to feel pain. So if you connect that kind of thinking to the story of Lilith, where it's like, either you deserve to feel a bunch of pain and you deserve to like birth these children in a dangerous and horrible way, or if you want equality and you want control of yourself and your body, you are a demon mother who eats babies.
Eats babies, but also births demons and
births demons.
Yeah. It's just like, for me, that's the thing I think also, like, growing up that kind of made me sad, was because like we get all these stories, you know, like, I mean, you might not know, but like growing up, it's like, okay, you go to like catechism class and you're like in the 3rd grade. So it's like a coloring book of Bible stories. And it's all these men. It's all these men doing heroic things. When a woman comes up, she's the wife. She's subservient. She gets pregnant, even though she doesn't want to be pregnant. You know, it is just like, it's just like, where are the strong women? That's what I wanted growing up. And so I didn't get that in the Bible. So it's like, yeah, I'm going to question this thing because I don't see a reflection of myself. Like, even as a kid, I know I have strength. My dad, like, that was his huge thing, like, too, growing up, was like, you can do whatever you want to do. Like, women are equal. Like, and to you know, have to go to church every Sunday and then religion class once a week and not see that reflected, I was just like, it's not for me. It's a no for me, dog. Like, and it's just like, how did you feel growing up? Like, in terms of the religion and the stories being told, like, did anything resonate with you? I mean, obviously you're interested in it because you almost got a religion minor.
Yeah. I feel like I'm similar to what you were saying. Like, I feel like I'm in it for the story. Like, I'm fascinated by the stories behind religion. I'm fascinated in like the anthropology behind it, where you're looking at sort of why people believe the things that they believe, how that then like manifested and sort of had like trickle down effect throughout society. I find that all so interesting. So I definitely come at it from more of like a detached storytelling perspective. And I think like as a writer too, like I love like so cliche, but like the hero's journey and like studying it through like just the history of storytelling and that sort of thing. But yeah, no, I have a hard time with stories in general that don't have any sort of like female endpoint. And I think that that's definitely something to consider with growing up in a religious household as a person who is looking for themselves in any of these stories and doesn't see like their own values reflected in it. I know from my own perspective, I was a bit of a rascal, and I'd always be like, wait, but this doesn't make sense. Like, where's the proof? Like, how do you know? And that would like piss off all of my like Hebrew school teachers to no end. Like, it's a story. Like, please continue. And I'd be like, wait. So it's interesting, and I feel like over time, going from that point of being like, but where's the proof, to being like, oh, you don't necessarily need the proof in order to appreciate the stories for what they are and sort of see the connections and the ramifications.
Yeah, definitely. And I talk about this in a few episodes, so I won't, divulge too much, but it's like, yes, for me growing up, I had this huge book of virtue stories, like the tortoise and the hare and, the whatever, Goldilocks. And my dad told me, like, these are stories that teach us lessons. And I was like, okay, that I understand, and then I went to Catholic school for 1 year. And then like you, I was just asking questions and they were like, get this kid out of here. Like, what? Like, literally my 4th grade teacher had to go ask the 5th grade teacher because she couldn't figure out how to answer my question about, okay, the world was created in 7 days and then the humans came, but the dinosaurs came before the humans. So what day? And they're like, a day is like 1,000 years. And I'm like, it don't make no sense. So why do we have to have a 7-day week now? And they're like, symbolism.
In the Cain and Abel story, it doesn't connect.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just like, so all these brothers and sisters, like, we all come from brothers and sisters. And they were just like, yeah, I guess. But basically, like, it's like I had this burger of virtues, and then I'm told, like, okay, but then this is the Bible, this is fact, and this is truth. And it's like the older I got, the more I was like, this is just a parable. This is just a story. Yeah. This is just something to give people an idea of how to overcome, a problem, or, just to give them faith that, like, through all hardships, through all, floods that kill all humans and animals, like, there can still be hope because God will lead you. And it's like, okay, like, I get it, but don't tell me that actually happened.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you said Book of Virtues, because I mentioned that my great aunt was a Catholic nun.
Yeah.
And she would always send me, she like had me subscribe to this video, like this VHS series called like the Book of Virtues. And it was like these 30-minute animated stories from the Bible that I was obsessed with. Yeah. And it would be like these animated characters that would like go through the virtue, and it would be like, today we're learning humility.
Yeah.
Connected to a story from the Bible. And it's funny because I was obsessed with television and storytelling even from like a really young age. So like I would watch them over and over again, like loving it as a story, but never once was like, oh, this is something that happened in real life.
Yeah, exactly. And it's that, I think also that bothers me when people try to use the Bible to validate reasoning against human rights or gay marriage or, abortion rights and things like that. It's like, it's not fact. And it's also words that were passed down thousands of years ago. We must adapt as a society. We must evolve. We must understand that with billions of humans, they couldn't possibly have understood, the multiples and different types of lives that people could live. Like back then, it's like you were a farmer or this or that, but now you could be anything and you can be so much more, and you could be rich, you could be poor, but in much different ways than they were rich and they were poor. And it's like these people that don't want to evolve from that drives me crazy.
Yeah, it's like that they're so stuck on the like tiny little minutia details that they don't really realize that like the teachings of Christ are actually lovely. like loving people, taking care of your neighbors, like all of those things are lovely things to do that like are kind of not necessarily connected to hating somebody based on who they fundamentally are.
Yeah, like the golden rule, treat others how you want to be treated, was like huge growing up. Yeah. And so it's like, you're not like, would you like it if I did that to you? Like, and it's just like, it's always no, like you wouldn't like to be treated that way. And it for me, that's a part of this podcast too, is like, I'm hoping that this will also reach some people who maybe have not contradicted their belief systems or thought against the grain, or, weren't able to absorb the Bible from like a retrospective position, and instead, we're very literal. So I'm hoping this will reach people, this will get them thinking outside of the literal Bible box. And I'm not saying that I want to take religion away from anybody. As I've said in multiple episodes, like, this is not to convert people. I'm not telling you to leave your faith. I'm just saying question it. I think we need to question it and evolve. And that's what I'm asking, because I do believe that having a faith in a religion is important to coping with life. Like it helps. That's what gives us hope. It's, like, that's what heaven is all about, is like that fear of death and not being here anymore. And like, there is a relief of, an afterlife, if you're able to believe in that. And it's like, okay, so that's kind of what I'm hoping for this podcast. So if that's you guys watching right now, welcome. So yeah, but let's go into our last spice girl, which is you, Spice. Look at her. Okay, sporty. I honestly don't think of you as sporty Spice like ever, but she was the last one left. But
I'll take it.
I mean, it fits perfectly. And I'm like bragging my Photoshop skills. Like, it's so perfect.
The only time anybody has ever called me sporty.
Yeah, but like you are not sporty. But it's also like I don't really feel like you're any specific one that already exists. So if you were a Spice Girl, what would your, and also like, side note, problematic for me that I was Scary Spice growing up, obviously, because she's the only black one. But it's like, why she gotta be scary?
Why is she the scary one? Yeah,
very problematic for me. But if you were a Spice Girl, what do you think your spice would be?
Like within the working.
No. Like all words are available to you.
Ooh. I don't know. Like this is like probably the stupidest answer. I mean, I'd be funny Spice or like whatever better version of that would like imply that you're the Spice Girl that has like a like spicier sense of humor.
Okay. I know it's like weird too, like because like ginger spice is an actual spice.
Yeah.
But nobody else is an actual spice.
Paprika.
Yeah, like turmeric. No, but yeah, I think that fits for you. It's like everything you do has like a little comedy spin and
Spicy spice.
Yeah. You're like like with silly spice. If I had one, it's funny because I feel like I would be like Mother Spice, like. Like this maternal spice that's like
spice.
Yeah, like it's just good on everything in terms of the spice, but then also like just good to everyone. Just want to bring joy, make people feel comfortable and happy. So it's like I'd be like the spice of all spices, basically, is what I'm saying.
What is it, like everything but the bagel?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that thing is everywhere. But yeah, I'd be everything but the bagel. I love that. I love that for me. But yeah, so and then I was shuffling my tarot deck as we were talking, got your energy into here. And I pulled 3 cards that kind of have a little message for you. So I'll just go through them really quickly and then we can kind of sign off and thank you so much for doing this with me. This was so fun.
So fun.
I love that we got to talk about women and strong women and power and girl power. Like, so yeah. But yeah, so the first card I pulled for you, and this is like just a general message. You can take it however you want to take it, apply it to whatever. So I won't necessarily do like past, present, future or advice blindside in current situation. But yeah, just going through the cards. The first one I got was Judgment.
Ooh.
And so we see green here. Green is our heart chakra as the butterfly lies on her chest. So this is all about opening your heart, spreading your wings and flying, showing love. But this card is all about like being reborn. It's like starting anew. It's kind of like new adventures. It's also about like clarity. You mean it's literally judgment. So it's like your judgment moving forward and having clarity with that, and also like leading with your heart, leading with like this love and this warmth and this energy of doing something you love moving forward. That's what I'm getting from here.
I love that.
And then I also, so this is kind of strange because you actually pulled 2 major arcana cards, which are like huge life things versus like the cups and the swords, which are like more minor details of your journey. So I see like big things are happening right now in your life between the Judgment and then I pulled Temperance. Let me see if I can get her straight. So this is Temperance. This is a little different than a regular deck, and I can't even remember what Temperance is in a regular deck, but I actually pulled her upside down. So I'm gonna read her like that. But this tarot deck is like very symbolic. Everything is done with a purpose. And with Temperance, let's see here. It's all about, well, when it's upside down, it's all about impatience. So making sure that you're taking your time, and being like mindful of maybe splurging, being a little excessive with things, and making sure that you're not like, even with just maybe your energy, it's like making sure that you're putting everything where it needs to be, um, and not making, and like basically figuring out what is worth your time and energy, and making sure that you're putting your energy into those versus like maybe something that's like over here and you're like, I'm kind of sort of iffy about it, but here, let me work on it. It's like, no, drop it, like cut it out. You don't need it. If you really aren't that in love with it, that love, that heart, like if you don't feel that love and joy, if it's not bringing you joy, cut it out of your life right now, because it's not serving you and it's not going to get you anywhere. So that's what Temperance is telling me. And then last, I pulled, so we do gourds in this deck, which is our cups, essentially. So I got the 3, which is all about, like, see this cute little community of women. They're, like, bringing the water in their gourds back to their tribe. And it's great. This is all about celebration and friendship. But it's also about conception. Again, I'm seeing something new, big happening for you, if you can focus your energy and really figure out how to get there. But this is saying like you're going to be able to like make it happen and celebrate with friends, even though COVID friendly. But it's going to be great. It's going to be a new, a change, something new. The gourds are also like symbolic of like the flow. Like if you trust the flow of things, let the blessings flow into your life. Like I said, if something feels like it's not bringing you joy, don't let it stick into your gourd, right? Let it like kind of skim over the top and pass you by. You really just want to fill your cup, the cups we think of like, oh, half full, half empty kind of thing. You always want to be half full. So think about what is going into your cup to make it full, or not even half full, make it full, like 100%. But it's great. It's like, there's a celebration coming along of, something new. If you can kind of focus your energy, and lead with your heart, lead with here. And I also pulled this stone is calling for you. This is my Lesagate, I believe. And it's all about joy. It's all about happiness and new things and happiness and celebration. So I see something coming for you.
I love this.
Yes, go queen. I love it. I'm so excited to see what happens. So just be wary of, putting your energy where it's not serving you, and splurging. Don't splurge right now. It's not the time. I don't like to say don't treat yourself, but just be careful about what you treat yourself with. But thank you again so much. I hope you had a good time. I had a great time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was a blast.
Yes, of course. And, maybe there'll be a season 2 and we can do another thing and maybe have more people on and we can talk about different stuff. So I'm super excited to see how this evolves and who watches and who tunes in. But thank you so much. I hope you have a great day, and stay safe and stay healthy out there.
Yeah, you too.
All right. Thank you. All right, guys. What a great talk about feminism, the women of the Bible, the Spice Girls of the Bible. Thank you so much. If you are new and this was your first one, be sure to catch up the rest of our episodes. If you've watched them before, stay tuned because I have more coming. Definitely stay tuned because I am going to share some details about where to watch, where to catch our advertisements, where to follow, and all that good stuff.
If you made it this far, wow, I'm so flattered. Thanks again for tuning into my passion project, THEOLOGEEZ. If you'd like to follow me, your host, or my guest today, you can find our social medias in the caption below, along with all streaming options and my upload schedule. I urge you to live your best life, do what makes you happy, but also let's be kinder to each other. There's no blueprint for this thing called life, and we're all just doing what we can to get by. Until next time, stay open-minded.